All right. We're live. If you're watching the recording, check the timestamps to see when I actually start, because I'm going to hang out here for a little bit and let us collect some human beings to join us live, which will be about 4 or 5 minutes or so. Oh. You can hear me? Hello? Hello? Awesome. I just got on. Welcome. Welcome. Welcome, Hope. Welcome, Rosio, Michelle, Jamie, Mira, Karen. Man, I'm so unprepared for this video today. What are we doing? Episode 60? Oh, that's sweet. Yeah, we're going to get started here in a few moments. Just got to prepare. Man, I don't even know what I'm going to talk about. But I never do. Why am I surprised? Why am I surprised that I'm so unprepared? This isn't new. Welcome, Shauna. Huh. Hey, Lori. Welcome, Tom. Welcome, Michelle. Read it, do. Okay, this is happening. Welcome, MJ. I wonder if I can improve this lighting situation. Not much. Oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So last night I set my alarm for 5 a.m. And as I was setting it, I was like, man, I really wish I woke up at 3:30 so I could go to work. And I woke up at 3:30, 3:29 actually. And I looked at my phone And I was like, yes, let's go. So I got up at 3:30 and took a cold shower, got dressed, shaved my face, and got to work. Well, got to work as if I got to go somewhere. Not really. It's in my house. But started working at 4. I was so excited. And now it's 12 o'clock. Feels like I've worked a whole day. But after this program, I'm going to keep going. Bunch of exciting things to do. Okay, you guys ready to do this show? I might be like delaying a little bit. But I think we're just going to jump into it. Anything to mention before we begin? I hope you guys are doing okay. I hope you're well. And if you're not well, I hope you keep watching this program because I think it might help. Maybe a little bit. Or it's going to irritate you. I think those are the two options. It's either going to irritate you or you're really going to enjoy it. All right, I'm going to start this episode by just being quiet for like a minute or two. Allow myself to be present. And then from that stillness, we'll start the show. And I'll run my mouth about the topic, sharing whatever comes up for me. And then after that, for about 30 minutes or so, maybe 40, we can check in with those that are watching live and see if they have any questions or anything they'd like me to speak to. And then we'll end with a super short and sweet guided meditation. That's the plan. But you know how I am with plans. So let's just see what happens. All right. I'm going to be still. So excited. Oh my goodness. Okay, we're going to do it. Welcome to the program. This is Holding Space for Love to Be Seen. That's the name of the show. I keep thinking I'm going to change it, but it's working for now. My name is Tiger, and I'm going to hang out here for about an hour. Let me turn my Slack messages off because that's going to go nonstop. I'm going to talk about the subject today, the mother of unconditional love, and share whatever arises for me as I ponder that. And then for those that are watching the live show, if you got questions, we can answer those questions. And then we'll end with a guided meditation. Anyway, let's jump into it. The video today, you know what? I almost want to say that the video is sponsored by the Monday Insight letter that I write on Mondays. And it gives me inspiration for this show on Tuesdays. That's kind of my flow, is I write the insight letter. I think about what I want to explore, talk about, communicate, something that invites us to open up, fear less, and love more. And then that just becomes the title of the show on Tuesday. And so it's an extra bonus for you if you receive the Monday Insight letter, because it kind of prepares the heart for this time together on the video. And I kind of assume that you read it. But the concept here, or at least what I attempted to do in the newsletter, was to illustrate how this loving foundation of life, and if you don't see that that's the case, maybe we'll get into that. But the loving foundation of life is very much like what we might call the unconfused, unconditional love of a motherly energy. And this resonates so much with me because there's this quality of now, and my goodness, I'm just using silly words, trying to point to something, but just go there with me. There's this sacred quality of right now where, in contrast to the mind, there's no judgment. There's no attempt to escape the moment. There's no demand. There's just a presence that completely allows you to be as you are. It doesn't matter to what degree you're hurting. It doesn't matter what plans you think you have for tomorrow. This presence, this space, doesn't care much about any of that. What this space cares about is holding the reality of you and inviting you to see what's really happening. You know, I keep talking about this, and granted, I'm always talking about this with people, but it's just so fascinating, the contrast in our human experience when you look at what we think is happening and what is really happening. Because here I am describing the presence of this moment, this sacred quality. And so often as we go about our humanness, we're just completely oblivious to it. We are adorably consumed by the mind's content, believing in our imagination, believing in our stories, anxious about tomorrow, sad about yesterday. And yet we're not recognizing the profundity of now. I mean, it's the classic example of, isn't it just amazing to be alive? Like, doesn't that blow your mind a little bit? Maybe we've come to this place of thinking it's normal. But in the same way, nobody understands how this is happening. It doesn't make any sense to the mind. But yet here we are having an experience of being alive. And yet contained in that experience is this capacity to, oh man, I don't even know the words. This capacity to fall into an enormous amount of grace. And maybe it's for the one who's seen that. Maybe it's for the one who has touched the depth of that love. Maybe it's a spiritual discovery for you. But to, again, it's recognizing the difference where we have everything that we fear in the mind, everything that seems to make living problematic. And yet beyond all that content, there's this nowness where there's nothing to be afraid of. There's this nowness that doesn't reject you in any way. There's this nowness that allows you to be. And isn't that interesting? Because the struggle in being human is the assumption that we're not allowed to be, is the assumption that there's something real to fear, is the assumption that there's some sort of demand outside of the demand that we put on ourselves. And we believe that. But yet, when you look, it's not really happening. One sec, I wanted to look at something. Why does that disappear? How? There it is. You know, I was having a Zoom conversation yesterday, and this woman I was talking to was describing the great difficulty in how hard she is on herself. Maybe you can relate. But she's sharing with me the things that happen and her subsequent reaction and internal dialogue. And it's so incredibly unhelpful. And what's funny, because as we explored it, you know, the question is like, okay, how long have you been saying that? How long have you been that hard on yourself? And has it ever worked? Has it actually ever helped you connect with what you're really looking for? And what are we ultimately looking for? It's an interesting question, because in one way, we're looking for a space of relaxation. We're looking for a space that is the embrace of what we are. Right? We're looking for a space where we can see ourselves as enough. And so fundamentally, what you're telling me, Mrs. Johnson, is that the way you're going to get to seeing yourself as enough is by repeatedly telling yourself that you're not enough. In hopes that one day you'll be enough. How's that going? How long have you been trying that? It's so important to see that it just doesn't work. You know, beyond just talking about it, but to have one of those holy shit moments. This isn't working. And likewise, we can draw the illustration where imagine this self that you keep talking down to is a child that comes to you who is scared and confused. Scared and confused of imaginary things, by the way, which is understandable, right? Imagine a child who thinks there's a monster in the closet comes to you terrified. How do you treat that child? Do you approach with understanding and compassion? Do you hold a space that allows the fear to relax? Or do you say, get out of here, I don't have time for that? I've got things to do, people to impress, objects to collect. images to maintain. What's the consequence of holding that kind of space for a child? Year after year after year, maybe half of a lifetime. You see, and as we've traveled this road being so unkind to ourselves, there's a lot that gets repressed. There's a lot that's unmet. There's a lot that feels like it's not safe to be authentic, that it's not safe to express the sincerity of your fears, the sincerity of what might seem like inadequacy, the sincerity of all of these things, which is really just a doorway to surrender. And because we as human beings are so determined to not surrender, we're so determined to have control, make things how we think they should be, that anytime we even touch upon that doorway, we say no. That's not working. It's fascinating because beyond all the stories of what we think we want, my goodness, so many stories. Not only of what we think we want, but how we think things should be, with an undertone of assumption that thinks life is making a mistake, that thinks life doesn't know what it's doing. And in this assumption, we violently try to control ourselves and control other people and control experiences, thinking it has to go this way and not that way. How exhausting. You know what? Again, look at this space of unconditional love. Do you see that this space isn't interested in controlling you? Isn't interested in you becoming this or becoming that? It doesn't need that from you. It already loves you. And that's a wild exploration for the human being. And let me tell you why. Because the human being has this conditioning that maybe we can call conditional love. The human being has been conditioned to believe that love is only given when conditions are met. We've been taught this. So much so that we look at ourselves and we say, "Dear self, I'll love you if you look a certain way. Dear self, I'll love you if you show up a certain way. I'll love you if you're smart enough. I'll love you if you don't look dumb. I'll love you if you don't make mistakes. I'll love you if you're certain. I'll love you if you know what you're doing. I'll love you if you don't fail. I'll love you if you love me." That's not love. Do you see in all of these conditions? And I wonder if this is as profound to you as it is for me. But to recognize that conditional love, the love that says, "I'll love you if," is a love that's saying, "I don't love you right now." I'm telling you that I don't love you right now, and I will love you if. And a love that isn't love now isn't love. There's no future love because that's an idea of love. That's in the imagination. It's not real. Right? And you can see this in the unconditional love of a mother. And we can imagine that it's genuine. It's not, dear child, look how I want you to look and then I'll love you. It's not, dear child, don't make mistakes and I'll love you. What it is, dear child, I see you. I see what you really are. You're my child, and there's nothing that can change that. I love you because you're my child. Not because of this, not because of that, but because you are. And you see what gets in the way practically for the parent and their love for their child that makes it conditional is the parents trying to use the child to satisfy the parent's inadequacy. And this plays itself out in so many ways. That says in some form or fashion, dear child, stop whining and then I'll love you, because when you're whining, it makes me think I'm a bad person. And so I'm going to be unkind to you as a way of manipulating you to be how I want you to be, so that I can feel like I'm lovable. And so I have a condition on myself. I have a condition that says, dear self, if your child isn't screaming, then I'll love you. How can I get my child to stop screaming? Dear self, if my child is successful in the world, then I'll love you. That's why it's so important to resolve these things, by the way. And all these things are innocent misunderstandings. They're little confusions in how we see ourselves, others in life. We are looking out through a filter that distorts the reality of love, because we think we know what love is, but love is so beyond our ideas about it. And I'm not trying to create an expectation that says you should be unconditionally loving. That would be a condition. If anything, I'm almost pointing to the impossibility of your humanness being unconditionally loving, and seeing that that's okay. That too is loved. The misunderstanding is understood. The confusion is seen. There's an immensity of compassion for the fear. You see, it's not so much that the human become unconditionally loving. It's to see that life already is. And you can use the word God there. You see, it's not that you should become God. It's that you should see that God is. It's not that you should become the controller in life, but to see that life is already under control. And when this is seen, there's a profound relaxation that emerges. You know what? As an example, when you can see that your inability to be unconditionally loving is loved, then when you find yourself loving conditionally, it's very easy to let that go and learn from it and move on. But when you judge yourself for having conditions, do you see the mess you make? It's like you put an impossible expectation on yourself. Again, it's like you have an expectation that you should be God, which is not going to happen. You have an expectation on yourself that you should know everything that life knows. That's not reasonable. This is what I love about the sacred relationship with or between the human being and God. Call it source, call it universe, whatever. But the recognition that there is an aspect of what we are that is intimately intertwined with that which touches everything. And so we can have our human experience while also knowing that it's held. And again, this invites a softness in our human experience. It invites a gentleness. It invites a permission to make mistakes, which is also a permission to learn. It invites permission to fail, which invites a permission to succeed. It invites permission for the whole experience, because the whole experience is loved, because love is unconditional. Now, again, look at what makes it more problematic. It's the idea that love is conditional, which is also like saying something's unforgivable. That's a whole nother episode. I find great solace in a playful quality found within unconditional love. It's almost like, look at it this way. Look at it this way. The space of right now, the container that we're in, it doesn't take anything seriously, right? The only thing that gets interpreted as serious is the mind interpreting something as serious, which is fine. You're free. You can do that. But the seriousness doesn't exist outside of your belief in something being serious. The space of now just holds it all, whatever it is. There's no restriction. There's no capturing. There's no resistance. It's all just held. Which is also like saying there's nothing that's feared. Right? Because for there to be that agitation of seriousness, there has to be an element of fear. And in a space that's unconditionally loving, that space is not fearing anything. that space isn't even fearing fear, meaning that if you show up with fear, unconditional love is not afraid of your fear. This is partly because unconditional love knows there's nothing to be afraid of. And so if you're afraid, love is not afraid of your fear. It's held. It's allowed. Which is exactly why you can show up in this moment and completely admit that you're terrified. And that's okay. Which is so classic. And this is the work that I do with talking to people. They bring to me what they're afraid of. And in some way, I find a way to show them that they don't need to be afraid of that. They can, and it's okay. But the more we look at it, the more we unwrap it, we see that we're imagining things that aren't really there. And it's so beautiful to see this because it's simply our mind getting captured temporarily. Our mind is getting captured temporarily in the belief that there are monsters in the closet. But yet, if we walk up to the door together and look in the closet, what we see is that the things we imagine are in there aren't really in there, which is kind of like the experience of the fear of rejection, right? We could be paralyzed with a fear of rejection. And the more we look at what we think is happening, we see that it's not really happening, which is like saying it doesn't mean what you think it means. Like, oh, they didn't text me back. They rejected me. Is that what happened? Is that what it means? Or is that just what you're interpreting? Is that what you're imagining that it means? Where does that come from? Why would you choose that interpretation over something else? You see, there's this invitation to be still for a moment and see that there are these patterns of misunderstanding that are just constantly interpreting our experience in a way that's completely and adorably insane. And these interpretations are creating so much restriction unnecessarily that doesn't allow us to just be present and let life be life. Right? Like the example of someone not texting you back. To interpret that as rejection, good luck relaxing about it. But to acknowledging the reality that you don't know, meaning you don't really know why they didn't text you back. And even if they said, I didn't text you back because I hate you, you can see that that's not really about you. You don't know what's going on with them. You don't know what your interaction brought up for them, what it reminded them of about their past. Why are you taking that on? Can we not just let them have their experience? Which is very, very difficult to do when you want things from other people, like love. Do you ever notice this? This is fascinating. The more you want love from someone, you're unconsciously looking for where it's lacking. The more you want love from someone, the more your focus is determined to find where it's not showing. Right? Because the nature of wanting something is a declaration that it's not here. And so you're looking for where it's not here. as you want it. And as you look for it, you create it. Fascinating. And not to mention, to want love from another person is to misunderstand the nature of love. You don't get love from another person. That would imply that you're missing love. That would imply that love is limited. That would imply that what you are is not love. Which in another way of speaking would imply that you're separate from God. It's not true. It's an innocent misunderstanding. And alas, this is the journey we're all on, to remember these things, to remember the truth of our own nature, the reality of what we are, clarifying generations of misunderstandings, looking into all the dark places and seeing that there's nothing really there to be afraid of. That's the adventure. And you're perfectly allowed to go on that adventure, even if it's a scary adventure, because life knows there's nothing real to fear. You see, this is why, in one way, it looks like a cosmic shit show, where everything is just released into the wild. Holy shit. What is that other than a great exploration? Life experiencing itself along a vast polarity. You've got things to the extreme on this end and on this end, exploring all manner of experience. And in every direction, no matter which road you travel on, if you're paying attention, it all points back to the truth of what you are. It all points back to seeing yourself, others, and life more clearly. And the more you're open to see that, the easier it is to travel the road. The easier it is. Doesn't mean it's easy, but the easier it is. Because, again, what adventure is a worthwhile adventure if it's easy? That's not adventure. No, real adventure is going to challenge the boundary of your comfort zone. It's required. And again, once you know it's required, that you're going to have to go on an adventure, then you open up to that adventure. And when you open up to that adventure, you actually start learning quite rapidly. However, if you hide from the adventure, if you turn away from the adventure, you're saying, I don't want to see the lessons in this adventure. And then we grow, but painfully slow. Open up, fear less, love more. You see, the only conditions that we have to love are wrapped around the things that we fear. But the more we see that there's nothing to fear, or there's less to fear, then this is what allows for more love to be seen. which is why on your adventure, you're constantly encountering the things you fear. Why do you keep encountering the things that you fear? So you can look at them and see that they're not what you think they are and that you don't need to be afraid of them. And what happens if you are not afraid of them? There's more love that flows. Hasn't that been your journey so far? Encountering things you're scared of and then hiding from them, delaying looking at them. And sooner or later you realize, I have to face this. I have to look at it. And then what do you find? It's not what I thought it was. Yeah. That's the one lesson that you will experience in 1,000 different ways. You encounter what you fear, you contract, then you get to a point where you can't breathe and you have to move through the fear. And it's like a big, sweet exhale. And then you do it all over again. And as you travel and explore all these little fears, moving your way through them, it just opens the aperture and lets more light in, which is love. Amen. Okay. Let's do the Q&A. You guys got any questions? I see questions coming up about the insight letter. I imagine you're going to figure that out. It can't be that difficult to find. And on some of these platforms I stream on, I'm not allowed to mention certain things. So I got to let you figure it out, or else they might not let me come play on these platforms anymore. I might have already said too much. Which I think is really funny. Adorable rules. All right. I'm going to scroll back through the chat to see if there's any other questions. If you got questions, you can type them now, or if there's anything you want me to talk about. And then we will do the guided meditation. How do you overcome a maternal shit show to reach a true maternal love? Hope, can you clarify that for me? And help me understand what you're asking? I'd love to speak to that, but I want to hear a little bit more about that. I'm not totally understanding you. Jamie, your question of, are these sessions recorded for later listening? All I can tell you is not on the platform that you're watching. That's what I can say. Not on the platform that you are watching. I could even say all 60 episodes so far are not recorded on the platform from which you are watching. Hope follows up with, my mom was an alcoholic, totally unavailable, very conditional love. Okay. How to get from there to truly accepting unconditional love? Well, let me start by saying this. One of the great disasters in our human experience is we are looking for unconditional love in other people and from other people. And you might find the appearance of it from time to time, but you'll never find the reality of it in other human beings, let alone in yourself, in a sustained sort of way. Why? Because we're human beings and we're growing. And if we're growing, that means there are conditions to love, and we're always growing. So that's part of the human experience, is to have conditions. And so if we are looking for unconditional love in others, which also comes with an expectation that they should have it, we're going to be disappointed. You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me of the journey where we are running around looking for somebody else to hold on to. Even looking for something to hold on to. And again, I'm using words to talk about something that's beyond words, which is why I often resort back to religious language or spiritual language. And in the spirit of that, we're looking for something to hold on to other than God. We're looking for something to hold on to other than the truth of life. And that's going to be a disaster. And I don't know if this is relevant, but maybe it could help. In our attempts to hold on to other people or things in the world, what you're trying to hold on to is mental content. You're not actually trying to hold on to somebody else. You're trying to hold on to your idea of them. You're not actually trying to hold on to something in the world. You're trying to hold on to your idea about it. You're not actually holding on to an experience. You're holding on to what you think it means. And so what we're trying to hold on to is imagination. We're trying to hold on to that which is a product of thought, product of the mind. And the mind can't see what's true. The mind paints pictures. There's no truth in the mind. And this is a stretch for people because most people live their entire life in the mind. For them, they think what they think is real. Like in the same way, you can look at another person and have thoughts about the person and then think your thoughts are really about the person, rather than it's your thoughts about who you think someone is. It's very similar to taking a photograph of someone and then thinking they are the photograph. But yet there's a massive disparity between the photograph and the reality of the other person. The photograph isn't even alive. The photograph is dead. There's no life to it. There's no reality to it. It's an image. And so this is what the mind does. It takes photographs of things, and we think the photograph is the thing. And we hold on to the precious photograph, thinking we're holding on to something real. And then we find out eventually it's not real. Thus is the disappointment. And so how to move on? See what's real. Be willing to let go of the photograph, which is also like saying, be willing to let go of the demand that thinks your mother should have been XYZ. That's a photograph. Like, your mother couldn't be anything other than what was playing out in her experience. That was her journey. Like, put it this way. And again, I'm just using silly words. People are born into certain circumstances, and they're too numerous to mention. I mean, the variables there are unending. But a person is born into a particular experience, which is a particular journey they're invited to travel. Whether it's the fears they encounter, the obstacles, the advantages, the disadvantages, the influences. I mean, there's so many things. And their quote unquote soul has chosen to explore life from that particular vantage point as a form of discovery. That's their journey. Just like you were born into a particular circumstance that led to particular experiences that shaped your confusion, which led to opportunities to see things and grow. Now, look at it this way. Imagine somebody is born into the environment of a deeply abusive container and flips their world upside down. Their journey of growth might not look like growth to you, but there's growth. Maybe not growth in the way that you think it should be, but it's impossible that there isn't some degree of growth because there's some degree of exploration. Put it this way. Life is learning through that individual's path, whether we see that happening or not. Life is learning. Just like your path, whether you see your growth or not, life is learning through your experience. I feel like I did an episode on this recently. And so likewise, moving on, you can see in one way or another what I'm talking about here is forgiveness. And it's not a forgiveness that says, I forgive you because I blame you and I think you should have been different. It's a forgiveness that recognizes I didn't really see you. It's a forgiveness that releases you to your journey and not needing you to be different anymore. I see the error of my own perception that was blaming you. And so in another way, my forgiveness of you is actually forgiving my own mind. Which is a beautifully empowering thing to see. To see that, because again, like everyone, I've got the same sort of story where it's like I could definitely find people to blame. But at the same time, it's like, holy shit. I didn't experience those people. I experienced my interpretation of those people. I experienced my confusion about those people, which was my confusion about myself, confusion about life. Seeing myself as separate and then blaming it on other people. And then in that, and again, I'm talking about myself here, in that, I recognize that everybody played their perfect part in my journey. Even at the time, I didn't see that. And even at the time, I would have argued about that. But to step back now, it's really a holy shit moment. It's only because they were as they were that I was able to encounter my own block, my own resistance. And this also speaks to the perfection of life being the way that it is. Right? You can look at life and assume that it's making so many mistakes, but it's only assumed that way because you're not getting what you want. And you're not getting what you want while being confused about what you really want. Right? Like, for example, say that I wanted the whole world to love me. And I thought that that was important. I thought that I really needed that. I thought that I want that. Do you see how frustrating my life becomes? Thinking that that's a real possibility, thinking that I need that, thinking that I can't relax until I get what I want. And as I'm not getting what I want, as I'm looking for evidence of the world not loving me, I just become more pissed off with the world and life because I think it's making a mistake. What's really going on? I'm confused. I'm confused, not seeing myself clearly. Most notably, not seeing that I'm not missing anything. I don't need the world to love me. It's not the role of the world to love me. And the more clearly I see that, I let go of that wanting. And what can I do now that I've let go of that wanting? Well, I don't have to be anxious about it anymore. I don't have to be anxious about missing something that I think I want. Because what's the ultimate discovery? I don't want anything. Why? Because I have everything. That's the ta-da moment. That's the discovery. Everything you think you're missing, you're not really missing anything that's real. And I understand how that could be a stretch. In the same way, it can be a stretch for somebody who thinks they need the whole world to love them. It can be someone who thinks they need their parents to love them. It's the same misunderstanding. It's the misunderstanding that believes in what you think is missing, which is also the misunderstanding that believes you're not enough. And if you fundamentally believe you're not enough, which is like saying you're unlovable, then you'll go looking to fix that not enough by taking it from somebody else. And it will be a disaster. Jennifer asks, how do you become more aware of unconscious beliefs that may not align with the truth of life? You are designed with a system that lets you know. In such a way that your biological system will let you know when you're believing something that's not in alignment with the truth of life. That alarm mechanism is called emotional pain, emotional disturbance. If you are ever emotionally disturbed, you're believing something that's not true. It doesn't mean pretend that you're not emotionally disturbed. It means be more honest about it and see what's really going on. What do I have to believe about myself in order to feel this way? How am I interpreting this experience? What is the meaning that I'm giving it? And is that true? Emotional pain is the same function as physical pain. When you touch a hot stove, you receive a pain response that tells you something is out of alignment with wellness. That pain is trying to get your attention. Emotional pain is the same, where it's telling you the way that you're perceiving is out of alignment with the truth of what you are. And so how do you become more aware? You get more in touch with yourself, which is like you get more honest with about how you're really feeling. How much energy and effort do we put into avoiding our own sincerity? How much effort do we put into distracting ourselves from our emotional experience, numbing ourselves from our emotional experience? All of those strategies are simply saying, I don't want to look. I don't want to be honest about this. And because we're not looking, we're distracting or numbing, then we can't clarify the misunderstanding. Which is why it's so valuable to find a space where you can explore these things, right? Classic safe space where you can be honest about your experience and see what's really there. And this is great in the human dynamic where we can hold space for each other. This is the function of relationships, by the way, where people can hold space for each other and allow more truth to be seen. A space for people to be honest. And also there's an invitation to not judge your beliefs. Because to judge your beliefs is just to have beliefs about your beliefs. The invitation is to see belief. And again, to recognize that you have a belief that's causing pain is no different from a child who comes around who's afraid of monsters in the closet. The invitation is to meet that child and hold space for them. It's not a demand that they shouldn't be afraid. It's not a demand that they should just get over it. Wow, I'm having a wild leg cramp right now. Yeah. Hold space, a loving space, the best you can. Yeah, Tonda, I see you're sharing there. That's a beautiful opportunity, right? In one way, we can look at our life experience and think that something went wrong. But I mean, it's such a profound opportunity to ask the question, how could this be for me somehow? And I understand that might not be a fun question, and it might not be time for that question, but maybe that's a question we ultimately end up looking at. What's the opportunity here? Because again, that movement that wants to avoid embracing it and avoid opening up to it is a movement that's afraid of it. And if we're afraid of it, that's saying that there's a restriction of love. Love can't flow because there's fear, which is often why fear is such a great pointer. Fear is pointing to the thing that's asking for our attention. All right, lovelies, let's do a guided meditation. Thanks, Lori. What's the title of this meditation going to be? Holding space for leg cramps. I'm just going to chill here for a second and give myself space to do this meditation, switch gears. I don't need to rush out of here. Thanks for the donation, Jennifer. And thanks to anyone else who's even considering donating to this space. I'm thankful even if you don't, but you just consider it. And even if you're not considering it, I think I'm still a little bit grateful for you. Thanks for just being here. hanging out with me. All right, guided meditation. This meditation is going to be called Thanks, Chantel. Thanks for buying me lunch. This meditation will be called Open Up, Fear Less, Love More. Here we go. Thanks, Lisa. That's lunch tomorrow. Welcome to this space. We're going to do a short and sweet guided meditation. I invite you to just be here with me. No rush, no hurry. Nowhere to get to. Nothing to achieve. We're just going to invite ourselves to be present. And maybe we can just let life do whatever it's going to do. The title of this meditation is Open Up, Fear Less, and Love More. Let's take just a very brief moment to invite ourselves into presence. And we're going to take 3 deep breaths and just relax a little bit more into right now. Let's breathe. The opportunity that we have, whether in this moment or in life, is to allow our hearts to open a little bit more and see to whatever degree that we can see that we don't really need to be afraid. And we don't even need to be afraid of being afraid. We can just allow. Maybe that's what we can do right now. Just allow. This is what I love about the present moment. The present moment just allows. Everything that you feel is already held. Nothing is pushed away. There's no demand. The totality of what you are is infinitely held right now. And it's quite interesting. Sometimes we don't see that. We assume that life says we can't be as we are. We assume that life is demanding something. But yet, as we come home to what is real and true in this moment, we can see just how held we are. Let's relax into that. Can we just feel ourselves being held by life? Which is recognizing that we are allowed to be. In this space is an invitation to see that whatever fear might be there, it's not a fear about anything that's really here. We're fearing the mind's content. We're fearing the stories. We're fearing what we turn things into with our mind. But in reality, in life itself, there's nothing to fear. Maybe we can breathe into that. And maybe if that's hard to see, then maybe we can just be open to it. It becomes easier to see as we lay down the mind's content. No need to think and think and think. Just come home. One of the beautiful things about connecting with this space, the more we can connect with the reality that there's nothing to fear, there is a beautiful love that starts to emerge. You see, because it's the restriction that comes from fear that doesn't allow for love to flow. But yet, as we see beyond those fears, we see that it's okay to let love flow, which is the same as seeing that it's okay to relax. It's like when you're anxious, scared, or taking things seriously, you hold your breath. But as you see things more clearly, you start to breathe. And so let's do just that. Let's breathe. And sure, you might forget all of this in 5 minutes. That's fine. But we can celebrate that space right now. And then release ourselves back into the human adventure where we will forget and then remember and then forget and then remember, where we will fall asleep and we will wake up and then we'll fall asleep and wake up. We can let that be part of it all. And all the while, as all of this is going on, the back and forth, there is still this moment holding you, even when you don't see that you're being held. The truth of this space, the truth of life, isn't going anywhere. So go, play in your adventure. Thanks for meditating with me today. Alrighty. Thanks, Tonda. Well, that completes episode 60. We going to keep doing this? I wondered if I was going to stop at 60. But I thought that about 10 and then 30. It is scheduled for next week. Episode 61. If you got topic ideas, let me know. Send me a message. Until then, I appreciate you. Thanks for showing up. And I will see you when I see you. Cheers. Bye-bye.